And welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, the deadly terrorist attack at the mall in Kenya. Close to 70 dead and hundreds wounded. And joining us now to talk about this whole nonsense is a man who, unfortunately, we had him on last week. If we have him on, it's never good news. Last week it was the Navy Yard shooting, and this week it's this. And David Katz, founder and CEO of Global Security Group, former DEA senior special agent specializing in firearms and Homeland Security. Hey, David, how are you, sir?
Good, Steve. How are you?
Good. And this time I'll add, and happens to be a, I'll say, follower of the Steve Malzberg Show and its many different locations throughout the years, and I'm appreciative of that.
I knew you when you were still a fledgling in New York. I was a big fan.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I appreciate it very much. I went home and I told some people, and they found it exciting too. Okay, just let me. Now this is a nightmare. I mean, it's a total nightmare. I mean, I'm sure you're well aware of the group and what happened. And they actually escorted many of the Muslims out of the mall. They asked the question, according to survivors. They asked them to name the Prophet Muhammad's mother. If they couldn't, then they were executed in cold blood with AK-47s, men, women, and children. And this offshoot of Al Qaeda, Al Shabaab, recruits. There's speculation 3 of them could have been from America originally, and it's a soft target, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah, it's just, and it's something, unfortunately, that could easily be duplicated here. And, it's just, you to the exact correct terminology, soft target. You have people, like, if you could just imagine a mall, anywhere in the greater New York area, you have unarmed, modestly trained security guards. And if you had a small group of heavily armed individuals go in, there is zero chance that they're getting stopped. It's just it's something that could happen anywhere. And unfortunately, it was Kenya that suffered the brunt this time.
Yeah. Now I want to get back to the United States in a second, but you've advised and worked with Israeli security and intelligence, and this mall apparently was partially owned, or if not fully owned, by Israeli interests. There are many Jewish-owned stores in there, from what I'm told, and Israeli commandos and/or advisors were on the ground as soon as possible inside Kenya. I believe. I mean, they've had a working relationship before, again for unfortunate circumstances, when someone took a shot at an Israeli airliner from Kenya. But to the best of your knowledge, how might the Israeli influence have been helpful in stopping this or ending this siege, insofar as we believe it's totally ended?
Well, I would suspect. I mean, certainly in an advisory capacity, absolutely. But I've heard rumors that I think pretty safe to say that there's some truth behind it. That in other similar circumstances, in places in South America and elsewhere, where hostage situations have been terminated, you see the commandos go in. You see a couple guys who are hooded and masked. I've heard that Israeli commandos have been thrown into the mix and have actually taken action in foreign countries because there is zero chance that the Kenyans lack these training and expertise to pull off a well executed operation. I've done training all over the world, and I can tell you that you see guys wearing the helmets, wearing the armor, having the weapons does not mean that they have even the slightest ability to execute a hostage rescue like this. And there's a group from Israel or even from the U.S. or some European countries, they would be a tremendous asset and could actually make it come out with a positive ending.
So if you had a bet, you would bet that there might have been some Israeli commandos involved in the raid.
I certainly, as advisors, and if there's any point where you couldn't see actually what was happening, that wouldn't surprise me. But again, you're talking about taking action in a foreign country, so you have jurisdictional issues. It would have to be government request, and I don't think the Israelis would take action unless there was.
Oh no, I meant government sanction. I would assume the president of Kenya would have called them in or accepted their offer. Yeah.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, if there were Israelis, if there were Israeli nationals in the mall, which it appears that there were, then certainly they would take an active interest. I mean, they've done this all over the world and very successfully.
What can the United States do, in your view, David, in your role as a Homeland Security expert who has traveled the world? What could the United States do to send a message right now? We just saw this. I think the United States should have sent a message after Beslan as well when we saw what happened in that school. Is it feasible for the United States through either publicly and through back channels for the president to take to the airwaves and say, look, I just want to put every country in the world on alert. If you harbor, train, or finance a terrorist group that ever does anything on U.S. soil, you will be held 100% responsible, and you will incur the full wrath of the U.S. military. I mean, would that be something helpful, or would that just be like inciting something? You tell me.
Well, I think it depends on who's giving that statement. I think if it was, I mean, we saw George Bush say it, and we saw George Bush do it. I think Ronald Reagan would have done the same thing. But if you have a president who is not well respected, whose word is not viewed as being rock solid abroad, well, then there may be an incitement element to it. I mean, look at the Syrian Red Line. It was just a humiliating experience, and my wife's family, by the way, is Russian, and you would not believe the way he is being lampooned, President Obama being lampooned in the Russian press. It's humiliating.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on who gives that stern warning.
Okay, so what can the United States do aside from that? I mean, you can't harden up every soft target in the U.S. because we're talking restaurants, we're talking movie theaters, we're talking schools. You probably can, but we don't have the will to do that either, apparently, because God forbid a gun in a school is an evil thing. So, I mean, what could we do?
Boy, unless we're willing, for example, I can tell you in malls what our dynamic is. Because as you know, if you have, let's say, retired police officers, you have a degree of ability even among the former rank and file. You have guys who are, they're on one end you have Barney Fife, on the other end you have Lieutenant Colombo, and the mass is in the middle. So if you really were going to take some retired law enforcement officers, post them in places, in malls, in schools, places like that, they would have to be the cream of the crop. They'd have to be, well-trained, born again hard, and that will cost a lot of money. So what we usually do is, in the so-called soft target, we'll combine both. You'll have the client, to save money, is not going to want to pay for a dozen well-trained, well-armed former police officers. So what they'll do is they'll say, okay, look, let's split it up. Let's have some unarmed guys backed up by some retired law enforcement officers. They're armed, they're trained. So at least you have the ability to respond initially to a ball of shots fired. Other than that, well, you have to do what the Israelis do. Schools. In every school, you're going to have at least a few teachers who have they've been in the military, they know how to handle weapons, they get extra training, so you have actual teachers who have been prepared to deal with an armed incursion. I made the point, too, like there's a couple schools that I know of here in New York City that retired police officers, pretty squared away guys that I know personally, they teach there now as teachers.
Right.
You use them as assets, but you're exactly right. You can't harden every place in the world. It's just impossible.
And I'm sure in the Israeli schools they're carrying machine guns, not just handguns or pistols. David, I thank you very much, sir, for your expertise, and we'll speak to you soon. Hopefully, not for bad news again.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Thank you so much, Steve.
My pleasure. Thank you. Take care. David Katz, ladies and gentlemen, founder, CEO of Global Security Group, former DEA senior special agent on firearms and Homeland Security, taught at Quantico, has been all over the world, and is a good guy to talk to for something like this. 855-777-9660. Do we give up more of our security? Or, I'm sorry, more of our freedoms to be more secure? You want to be searched going into a mall the way you're searched going into an airport, an airplane? What do you say? Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.
The Steve Malzberg Show.